We've just entered the prefrontal cortex. It's difficult to appreciate the scale of this place. Pictures really don't do it justice. Every decision, every plan begins here.
Would you look at this? One single neuron. Standing here, it's almost impossible to imagine that billions of cells just like this work together every second of our lives. Remarkable.
Hold on. That signal never reached the next neuron. Healthy neurons are designed to communicate efficiently. If these signals begin to fail, the whole network starts to struggle. So this is where our trail has led us. The adrenal gland. Whenever the brain senses danger, this remarkable organ helps prepare the entire body for action. Let's take a closer look. It's becoming more active. What's remarkable is that everything still appears healthy, yet it's behaving as though the body is under constant threat. So why would a healthy gland keep acting as if there's an emergency?
Every week, Elias explored the hidden world inside the human body. After, you and I will discover what those findings mean for our health. Hello, I'm Dr. David. What Elias just discovered inside the brain is something we see every day in medicine. The neuron isn't broken. In fact, it's trying desperately to keep functioning. And that tells us something very important about burnout. We saw an exhausted brain, stressed adrenal glands, inflammatory signals spreading through the body, and mitochondria struggling to keep up with the demands being placed upon them. But there's a surprising part. None of those organs are actually the problem. Burnout isn't a disease of the brain. It isn't simply a hormone problem. It isn't just about cortisol. Burnout is something much bigger than that. It's a gradual breakdown of communication between multiple biologic systems that were designed to help us adapt. And that's where I like to begin. One of the most common things I hear in clinic is this: I don't understand what's happening to me. My blood tests are normal. I used to work 12-hour days without thinking twice about it. Now I wake up exhausted before the day has even started. Most people assume burnout means they have simply worked too hard. That explanation sounds reasonable, but it's incomplete. Many people work extraordinarily hard for years without burning out. Others develop burnout despite what appears to be a manageable workload. So if it isn't simply about how much we work, then what is it? The answer lies in something medicine doesn't talk about nearly enough. It's our capacity to adapt. One of the biggest misconceptions about health is that stress itself is harmful. It isn't. If stress were inherently bad, exercise would be unhealthy. Learning a new language would be unhealthy. Even falling in love is a form of biological stress. The body was designed for challenge. In fact, challenge is one of the most powerful ways we become stronger. Think about it. Exercise stresses muscles so they grow. Vaccines challenge the immune system so it learns. Learning itself challenges the brain so new neurons connections form. Stress is not the enemy. The absence of recovery is. Think about going to the gym. You don't become stronger while lifting the weights. You become stronger afterwards while you're sleeping, eating, and recovering. Life works exactly the same way. Burnout begins when the body keeps paying the cost of adaptation but never had the opportunity to rebuild. That distinction changes everything. One thing I've noticed repeatedly throughout my career is that people often tell me, I don't even feel stressed anymore. At first glance, that sounds reassuring, but often it isn't. Sometimes when they're describing is nervous system that has spent so long operating in survival mode, the high stress has become its new normal. They have adopted so completely that they no longer recognize the warning signs. They're still functioning, they're still productive, they're still showing up to work every day, but underneath that performance, something important is quietly changing. The reserve is shrinking. I often explain resilience as if it were a savings account. Every night of poor sleep, every argument, every infection, every skipped meal, every period of uncertainty, every hour spent worrying, each one makes a small withdrawal. Then there are the deposits: restorative sleep, nutritious food, physical activity, time in nature, meaningful relationships, laughter, purpose, recovery. The body doesn't expect perfect balance every day. It simply expects that over time, the deposit exceeds the withdrawal. Burnout usually isn't caused by one catastrophic event. It's the result of thousands of tiny withdrawals that eventually exceeds the body's ability to replenish itself. That's why people often say, it happened all of a sudden. The collapse might appear sudden. The biology almost never is. One of the earliest warning signs I look for isn't exhaustion, it's slower recovery. Someone tells me, "Doctor, I can still get through the workday, but afterward I have absolutely nothing left." Or, "I used to recover after one night's sleep. Now it takes the entire weekend." Or perhaps I used to exercise because it gave me energy. Now I exercise and feel worse for the next 2 days. These are important clues. They tell me the body's adaptive reserve is shrinking long before disease develops, long before blood tests become abnormal, long before someone receives a diagnosis. Medicine has become incredibly good at diagnosing disease. We're much less good at recognizing declining function. Think about heart disease. We usually identify it after enough damage has occurred to appear on an ECG or an angiogram. But those arteries didn't suddenly become disease overnight. The biology has been changing quietly for years. Burnout followed the same principle. Symptoms appear late, loss of resilience begins much earlier. Another reason burnout is so confusing is because many people continue performing at an exceptionally high level. High achievers are masters of compensation. They compensate with caffeine, with adrenaline, with perfectionism, with longer hours, and with sheer determination. The body is remarkably good at maintaining performance. But compensation isn't the same thing as resilience. Eventually, the body sends a bill. And unlike financial debt, biological debts always collect interest. One of the reasons I become interested in system medicine is because the body doesn't divide itself into specialties. Your neurologist treats the brain. Your gastroenterologist treats the gut. Your endocrinologist treats hormones. But your body never separates them. Your brain is constantly communicating with the immune system. The immune system communicates with the gut. The gut influences hormones. Hormones influence metabolism. And mitochondria provide energy to every organ involved. Burnout isn't happening in one organ. It's happening within the conversations taking place between them. That's why one person can experience fatigue, insomnias, digestive symptoms, anxieties, poor concentration, headaches, muscle pain, recurrent infections, and brain fog all at the same time. These may seem like separate problems. Often they are different expressions of the same underlying loss of adaptive capacity. People often ask me why their blood tests are normal if they feel so unwell. That's an excellent question. Routine blood tests are incredibly valuable, but they're designed primarily to detect disease. They're much less sensitive at detecting declining function. Imagine driving a car. The engine is gradually becoming less efficient. Fuel consumption increases, the ride becomes rougher, acceleration isn't what it used to be, but the engine warning light hasn't come on yet. The car still drives, but routine investigation works much the same way. They identify disease exceptionally well. They often don't recognize when the body is quietly losing resilience. That's one reason people often feel dismissed. The symptoms are real. The biology simply hasn't crossed the threshold that traditional tests are designed to detect. Encouraging news is this. Burnout is not simply about working less. It's about restoring the body's capacity to adapt. That means rebuilding sleep, realigning circadian rhythms, supporting mitochondria function, reducing unnecessary inflammations, improving metabolic flexibility, restoring healthy relationship with food, and supporting the gut microbiome. Learning how to regulate the nervous system. Sometimes it also means making difficult decisions about how we work, how we live, and what we continue saying yes to. Recovering isn't passive. Recovery is an active biological process. So, how do you know whether you're moving toward burnout? Instead of asking, can I still keep going? Try asking different questions. How quickly do I recover after a difficult week? Do I wake feeling restored? Can I exercise without feeling worse afterward? Can I concentrate without relying on caffeine? Am I becoming less patient with the people that I care about? Do small problems feel disproportionately overwhelming? Do I still experience moments of curiosity, joy, and creativity? These questions often tells us much more about health than productivity ever can. Because health isn't simply the ability to perform. Health is the ability to recover. I'd like to leave you with one final thought. Throughout my career, whether working in busy hospitals, humanitarian emergencies, or functional medicine clinics, I've come to appreciate one consistent truth. The body whispers before it screams. Most of us wait for the scream, the diagnosis, the panic attack, the collapse, the illness that finally forces us to stop. But long before those events, the body is quietly communicating through slower recovery, lighter sleep, reduced resilience, declining energy, and the gradual loss of joy. Those whispers are not inconveniences, they're informations. But we learn to recognize them, we often have the opportunity to change direction long before disease takes hold. Before we finish, here's this week's clinical pearl. One of the biggest mistakes I see is judging health by performance. People tell me I'm still getting everything done, so I must be fine. But performance can be maintained long after resilience has begun to decline. The question isn't whether you can keep pushing. The question is how much biological effort now takes to achieve what once felt effortless. When everyday life starts demanding more energy than it used to, don't ignore it. Your body might be telling you that it isn't adopting harder than it should. Listen while it's still whispering. Thank you for joining me on this journey. I'm Dr. David, and this is the Tao Explorer.